Good evening and welcome to Face to Face. A very Merry Christmas to all Sri Lankans, especially our Christian viewers. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Niresh Eliathambi. Right, it's a wonderful day and we are looking forward to a wonderful year, next year 2025. But of course, for next year to be as successful as we want it to be, we need our economy to grow and to grow at a rapid pace. And to discuss this, we have with us this evening Mr. Chathuranga Abeysinghe, Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development. Good evening, Chathuranga, and welcome.
Good evening and Merry Christmas to you, and as for all the viewers, Merry Christmas to you all.
Right, Chathuranga, so Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development. These are areas which are expected to drive our economy, and not just in the next few months, but far into the future. If we are to compete with the best in the Asian region, we need these areas to perform. We need Sri Lankan industry to perform. Tell us a little bit about your plans for our major industries and any new industries that you want to see developed.
Yeah, Niresh, actually this is a big opportunity for the country to make this change, because for the last 30 or 40 years we have not been able to take the growth that where other countries have taken. So especially on the industrial side, the right policies has not been implemented, and even there has been various strategies that has not been executed. So some of our industries have thrived over the last few decades, but not enough in comparison to the global setup. So we are, from a local perspective, we are at $84 billion and our exports is $17.9 billion, with a very big trade deficit where we are now in crisis. So obviously, if we are to pull this through and to ensure that we have, as the President said, about 15.1 billion reserves by 2028, we will have to work hard, especially on our industrial development. And when we generally say industries, everybody thinks it's about the manufacturing. So it's not only about that, it's about the goods and the services. So as a ministry also, we are thinking of expanding the scope as well, to see, because any startup has similar problems, any mid-size organization has similar problems, and our department or our ministry is geared to set up in a way that you can support all. Basically, the industries that we already have a competitive advantage, like apparel, agri-exports, fisheries, then the coconut tea. I mean, when you say agri-exports, there are two components which are traditional, which we now value add and send, and then the new agriculture, fruits and other crops that we are doing. And when it comes to vehicle assembly also, and spare part manufacturing, we have done good for the last few years. So similarly, apart from that, the IT and the tourism as its own verticals will run fast. And from a manufacturing perspective, there are a few industries which we have potential, especially the Ayurvedic and the cosmetic sector. There is unique products that we can scale up. And if you take our boat building industry, it's also taking a very interesting leap as we speak. So there are various industries that Sri Lanka had potential and has created potential, so that we will support very strongly. And apart from that, there are certain industries which are competing with imports. They are quite good in terms of their quality and cost basis. So we will drive to improve local manufacturing and productivity, so that our trade deficit can be reduced going forward.
Now, to go forward, you need to examine what went wrong with these industries, or many of these industries, which as you said, they got off to a start, but then they couldn't evolve and grow. So what is it which prevented them? Is there a common set of factors?
So number one, Niresh, is, I mean, we've been talking in this same forum, it's about the policy consistency. So when policy consistency is not there, it's very difficult for industry to move ahead. Now, for example, the tax policies, for example, import-export restrictions and policies, and the labor policies, and when it comes to environmental policies, all these things are intertwined. So when you have a strong national industrial policy, you need to stick to it, but we never had one. We were discussing about it. We never had a industrial policy in place which is enacted to drive it. There were various strategies that was created but got not executed. That's the first thing, because as everyone who's in this country need to know which industry we are going to drive, which we have potential.
Absolutely.
And then based on that, Niresh, the workforce plan will be created. How our education system should align to that. Then based on that only our trade agreements and the trade negotiations will take place. Based on that only our investments should come. Based on that only our industrial zones should be developed. Based on that only our entrepreneurship drives, the startup culture needs to come through. So if you really take those basic aspects of industrial policy has not been there for our industrialists to pick and choose what they want to do. And apart from that, our industrialization never had a strong plan in capital formation. Now currently we are also facing the challenges of especially the SME sector fading off because of our capital formation has always been commercial banks at commercial rates. So if you really take countries which kind of boomed, the Vietnams and the South Koreas and the Indias, they had a mechanism to provide low cost long term capital for economic growth. So that piece is very weak, has been very weak. And when it comes to skill, as we all know, the skills that is required to deliver the industry is not being generated by the education systems. There's no alignment between what are the skills required for the industry versus what's been given. So there has been a mismatch. And again, we all know ease of doing business is very weak here. So I think now we are moving on to an index called Be Ready Index. But the reality is that the required support from the state has not been provided in terms of creating a fair playing ground and ensuring the law is at top of the everything, and then ensuring that each department or ministry coordinates to provide the support. Because now if you take Ministry of Industries probably give you approval for a particular industry, then land becomes your problem, and then particular environmental certificates to be your, I mean, within last 3 weeks I am seeing so much potential in lot of proposals which got stuck in various stages. And at the same time, Niresh, we have not got the FDIs that we wanted to grow. So as a country we have only got about 20 billion over the last 40 years, whereas countries like Vietnam gets 20 billion a year. So the main reason for the FDIs not to flow is that policy consistency not being there, and also political culture has played. Now even today if anyone goes to BOI, you will feel the difference, because you don't need a minister to call BOI for you to go there. So you go in, the process will take place. So there are various fundamental things that did not took place. I think it's enough that we spoke about these things, because previous programs with you I would have spoken all those things. So now we need to put them right. So that's our mandate, and we should be more discussing the changes that we are going to make. So the root causes has been identified. It's been very clear, and it's been comparatively, the gaps are identified between us, South Korea, Vietnam and India. So we need to get this leap, as you correctly said. We need to pass 6.5% GDP growth on an annual basis.
Is that your target for next year?
Yeah. So I think next year I'm not sure, but we need to reach that run rate within next 3 to 4 years. But obviously
we are at 5.5 already.
5.5 without all this support. So we are very thankful for our industrialists and who are resilient in all terms, right? So whether you had COVID, you wake up, you get up and move, and when you have, economic crisis, you go down and then you come up. We had both, all those issues. The Sri Lankan businessman has been very resilient in that sense. So as we give this particular support through policy and various reforms that's been made over the last 2 years in the IMF program, we are releasing one by one. It's not easy to negotiate, but every review we are going to give something to the industry. So that with those things, I think we should be able to reach a higher growth rate. And the exports also, Nilesh, we want to reach about a 15% annual growth to get there. And from other perspective, now the platform is clear. So this Christmas, and when we come to New Year, everything that we hoped and dreamed for is there. A stable government, stable interest rate, a single digit interest rate, a stable currency, and inflation is under control. So I think it's all good to go. It's about how we fast track what we want to do. And as we always say, it's not from one particular ministry, neither the president, it's going to happen. It's a collective effort of all the industries, syncing together to get the growth that is.
Now, Chathuranga, in past governments, interministerial cooperation was a huge problem. Ministers tended to view their areas as their feudal turf. Other ministers were not allowed to trespass into it. There was very little cooperation between ministries and between departments of different ministries. If at all an interministerial committee was formed, it usually got nowhere. So it was also a fight over money, who got the larger budgets and the larger grants from overseas and so on. Now, with your NPP government in office, how are things working out? And I'm not really speaking about the ministers, but at the lower levels, the officials who were there earlier are still there. Maybe not at the secretary level, but at the lower level. So have they bought into this new thinking?
Yeah, I think it's always about the leadership change. So what we want to drive, so we now drive a culture of solving problems fast. So obviously you need to talk to the other team on the other side, and there is this empowerment that we have done. So as ministers, we do talk to the the counterparts very oftenly. I mean, for the last 3 or 4 weeks, the cabinet met for a good half a day every Monday, entire cabinet. I don't think that has happened early. And the deputies have a WhatsApp group, so we try to talk to each other as much as possible in terms of, so the culture is now moving to the the officials as well, because they were never given the opportunity to work. That's what I feel. So currently, when you empower them and when you give them, this problem needs to be solved, and there's a particular level of emphasis and monitoring from the minister, it happens quite fast. So they are also getting into a culture of working together. I think secretaries would have met few times together. Yesterday our secretary said that there was an inter-secretarial meeting and she was able to get certain things done. and there's a lot of interconnected. Now today we were in Ministry of Finance. The last week I was we were able to talk to Ministry of Health on a particular industry. There was this particular law about advertising and labeling. So the industrialists come to us and we try to engage with them. We get the secretaries and the team to do the document work. At the same time, we talk to the relevant deputy to say this problem is coming your way. You have to ensure that is done. So because everybody knows there's no personal interest in this. Everybody knows these are things that are dire needs of the client and everybody who comes to our ministry is a customer, and we have to solve that problem as soon as possible. So they need to feel that urge, and they are coming to us because there's urgency. So if you are not having that same urgency, it's not possible to do. I can have Christmas today because we were able to close everything yesterday and parked very little for 26th. So this is how it's happening. I think as we go on, technology will also come. So there will be a process flow. Now it's manual. I think physically and as teams and as individuals, we are working together very nicely.
Now let me ask you about the BOI.
Yeah.
When it was originally formed as the GCEC, the Greater Colombo Economic Commission, many decades ago, it was very powerful. It was supposed to be a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
But then over the decades it seemed to lose its powers, intentionally so. Successive governments simply took powers away from the BOI, to the point where it was simply just the first stop for an investor, and then the investor had to run the gamut of maybe 20 or 30 other institutions trying to get
the one-stop shop, and you stop there.
Yeah, so exactly. So
I think
what's the situation now? What is the role of the BOI in the future?
See, it's like this. I think structurally there has not been big changes, but in the mindset it is. So BOI technically stops at the point of approval and passing the ball on to the relevant other authorities. So we are trying to see if there's a particular industry that comes and the BOI to pass it on to Ministry of Industry, so that we should be the one-stop shop there onwards, because BOI doesn't have that linkage to the ground. But they are working with the coordinating. It's like this. If it was about the official of BOI talking to official of land or environment authority and getting that thing done, it actually works. But what has technically happened is, for you to get BOI approval, you have a one stop at the minister, and when you want the land, you have to meet another minister, because they've created bottlenecks purposely so that you can't proceed. So more you can't proceed, you are prone to corruption, various favors, and so they've created enough bottlenecks so that you can't proceed. So I think with that culture changing, this is actually now smoothly flowing. So I'm not 100% sure how the current process of BOI, because it's not under our purview, but the feedback we are getting about the new chairman and the team is quite interesting. And also now I've got allocation from that side as an investment advisor. So when Ministry of Industries get proposals which are supposed to go to BOI, there's a point of contact, an email that we can send, and they will proceed from further. So it's not rocket science if you really want to manage things, but structurally there should be more powers to BOI in terms of superseding the provincial councils and the land authorities. I'm not sure whether it's that necessary, because there are guardrails for a reason, and if the teams can work together, we'll see. I think we will see.
But that's the main point, isn't it? The teams need to work together. And you mentioned that bottlenecks were intentionally created.
Yes.
So this was basically officials and politicians who were looking after themselves at the expense of the country.
Yeah, and I think it's not that the officials don't know. I mean, yesterday our secretary gave this thick book that lot of effort has gone into creating a business-friendly environment. I mean, these things have been done, but it's in the book. It never got implemented because there was no political will to implement it. So we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. I'll give one example. 2 weeks ago, anyway, I'm also from Kotte, so we got our professional network who supported for the party to work on the revamping of Kotte, like, you know, to becoming a model city and all that. So one of the thoughts that we had was, why can't Kotte be used as a tourist destination? Because Colombo, the tourists don't have a one-day program to visit, but Kotte is an amazing place. You have everything you need to cover one day, and you can start with those marshlands and those things, and then you can go to the cultural side, and then you can end up with the drama. So I mean, you have, and all these historical places are all. So we want to kind of, you know, think about how do you visit. And then today I went to UDA, Urban Development Authority, to talk about 3 main problems in Kotte, which is the Nugegoda supermarket, the Valikada supermarket, and the leftover building at Tarunodaya Mawatha, right? So while we were discussing, they were telling me how this planning works and how big those plans are. And actually, in Niresh, there's a entire country plan till 2050.
Till 2050.
How Sri Lanka should look like. And for the first time I'm seeing it. And then there's a entire plan how Kotte should look like, and how what needs to change and all that. And one of these officials pulled out a map which is done for tourism. The walking path, 2 trails, like one is a environmental and culture trail, another one is a culture trail. And I was thinking, wondering, we were trying to reinvent it, but it's already done. And so I invite all the citizens to go to UDA and that building at Battaramulla to see beautiful architecture and beautiful landscape. I mean, town planning has been done, thinking far ahead. We thought that our country never had far ahead plans, because we talk about, you know, hundreds of years of town planning. And this is amazing stuff. But all those plans are over in.
I mean, they were just gathering dust on a shelf somewhere. And fortunately, some of those officials are still there who remember
these are very talented people we have, and they have done enormous amount of work using various other expertise from other countries and all that. But nothing has got onto the ground. So this is where we feel there's a greater possibility if you really want to do it. So that's why we feel that this cultural change from a politician's perspective, having a vision and driving the team for a particular cause, there's enough resources that we can utilize.
Now, I noticed that you have spoken about the land issue, or the lack of land for investment.
Industrialization.
Yes, for industries. What's the solution to that, and why do we have this lack of shortage of land?
So firstly, as I explained early, the national plan, the how Sri Lanka look like, that is not being adhered to, right? And again, in terms of industrial land allocation, there is no clear demarcation to it. Colombo lands for industrialization is at a shortage. Everybody wants land from Western Province. In my institution, ministry, there's 152 requests
for land in the Western Province.
Western Province. They want in the Western Province. When we ask, Hambantara doesn't work for them. East doesn't work for them. How much incentive you give? Why? Why, Nivesh? You don't have schools there. You don't have health facilities there. You don't have the recreation you want. and you can just put an isolated building, and if your executives, your best talent is not willing to move there, why would you put industry? So if the industrialization need to take place, it's not only about the land, it's about the ecosystem that we create, the safe environment, schooling, health, the basic amenities of a person to live properly has to be there. Then only the investors will, because the road networks, right? So the entire road network through highways, it will be a little far away. So when you create the A9 and then you have another terminal to east, and then your central province, the highway. So when those four roads connect, we will have the network. Then it doesn't matter which area the zone is, as far as it has access to the highway. So then the transportation won't be a problem. The problem will be whether you can live in that area. So I think that is where we will put a lot of effort to see when you say industry. The second one is the industrial zones. We have 50 industrial zones under ministry, 17 under IDB, 34 under ministry. They were not designed in a way that it can yield better results. Now, for example, if we want to create an industrial zone, it has to be purpose built, right? So for example, if you are doing electronics, the guys who are doing assembly, the supply chain has to be in that one particular zone.
Absolutely.
So that creates synergy. Then your effluent treatment, water treatment, waste disposal, you have one unit for everyone. But now if you go to any industrial zone, you have biscuit manufacturer, then you have the iron fabricator, then you have the fish guy, right? What has happened? Every time a government change, a minister says to the Ministry of Industries, I need to provide jobs. You give me a zone. So they look for some land, and from LRC or forest or whatever, release that land and name this is an industrial zone, which is not ideal for industrialization. And then what they do is they break it into plots. Who gets the preference? The minister's letter gets the preference. Of course, there's evaluation, but again, what has happened is that you just pick. So, and there are so many land that is not working, that has been abandoned. So now, since last year, we are in the process of recovering those lands and giving to people who are in need. So we need to allocate some land areas. So we are planning for 7 more zones next year. I am jumping the gun before the budget, but still we need a national plan where a certain portion of land will be allocated for industrialization, and that need to be environmentally friendly, not threatening the livelihood of animals and all those things, and the residents. So there are zones that we need to demarcate, and that is how it's going to be. So these zones need to be built with all the facilities and the recreation around, so that it can be successful.
Well, hold that thought, because I'd like to discuss this land issue a little further. But right now we are crossing over for a short commercial break. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
කට්ටිය මගේ බෑන්ඩ් ගැලපෙන්නේ මගේ ටීම්
You are going to be an artist someday.
वही पगलू सैली इगी करना है की निम कमली कमली निम कमली कमली निम कमली कमली मेरी याद दुबावे
The Voice Sri Lanka, Season 3. Weekends at 8:30 p.m. on Sirasa TV.
ඕක කෙල්ලව පොතේ අස්සන් කරලා උස්සනකම් බෝ හොයනවා බ්‍රෝ.
මම මැරි කරන්න යන්නේ. හරිම ලස්සනයි.
සිරස ටෙලිතිරයෙන්
Welcome back to Face to Face. We are in conversation with Chathuranga Abeysinghe, Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development. Now, Chathuranga, before the break, you mentioned that in a particular zone, you would find all types of different factories, you know, fisheries to biscuits to electronics. This seems quite ludicrous. I mean, even a teenager would understand that you need to have a certain synergy within a zone in order for it to work. It's not just simply a collection of old factories. So there seems to have been no real vision in national development when you look at all these existing zones.
That's why we are here, no? We are bankrupt. Now, if you take coir-based products, we have very good coir-based products like, you know, brushes and out of coconut husk we make. So you have the supply in Kurunagala, no?
The coconut triangle.
Yeah. And when you have a factory in Horana, doesn't work, right? Now you have fisheries somewhere, fish processing, and the fish processing output, which is the, say, prawns that, you know, the cover of the prawn that comes out as waste, that can be used for fertilizer. So now, yesterday, day before, a person came. He's in close to Pannala. So he's asking for land because his private land he's doing the business, and he wants the land at that area because they are close to, they can get that raw material.
Right.
Right. So when you really design these things, you need to see how the supply chain works. If it's an imported raw material, it's good to have near a port or access to port. If it's something to need to be shipped fast, like fish, flowers and ornamental fish, it needs to be very close to airport, right? But your supply chain needs to be mapped. And if it's also requiring particular ingredient, like a semi-processed item to come into the factory, that should be in the same zone. This is not rocket science, right? But
it's a world of difference from saying, I'm from Hambantota, that's my my electorate, and therefore the land should be there, the airport should be there. So I think
this is, I mean, I'll bring one example. I don't want to iterate these things. We remember this famous quote by the president. Ambultialge the highway, people laughed at it for a long time, and now he's the president. Where's the vision? Because before you take the industrialization, you put the highway, and actually people transportation don't pay you back. Your ROI is low. We should have done the central highway first. That is where the production is. I mean, when we ruled by the British, why did they take the rail track first to the hill country? Because you can bring the production down. It's not that the favorite location of the British was Gaul. You didn't do that. I mean, what I'm trying to say is the road network, even those investments, those infrastructure has to be it needs to have a science to support the value chain, to make the value chain efficient, to reduce the cost of manufacturing, to reduce the cost of transportation, reduce the energy usage. And this is how you design industry. I know it's tough where we are today, but for sure when you are going forward, we will ensure that most of these good practices are adhered to.
Like you said, it's not rocket science, but as long as different players are working
multiple interests, no?
Yeah, when it's multiple interests, it doesn't work. Now, in the past, Chathuranga, we have had this problem where, say, the provincial council in a province would be working in a different direction. Then the Pradeshya Sabha would be working in another direction, and so on and so forth. Environmental authorities in yet another direction. Now, how are you going to bring this all together? And what about the local government elections? Will that bring some clarity to this?
I think this particular change we want to make is do or die. There's no fallback for us. I think this political change is going to give destination. So we won't have politicians from NPP who's leading a provincial council or a Palat Sabha who will have a different motive to the book that we presented a month ago, because we are politically aligned. If you really look at the discipline of the parliament now, we talk the same language. Everybody has their own expertise, but it again boils down to what we want to do. So I don't think we will have that level of conflict, because it's a party that drives a particular agenda, and we have a national plan. And even in these institutions, Palat Sabha, Pradesh Sabha, and local institutions, the purpose is not being given by the central ministries. It's easy to give you examples. Now we want to drive entrepreneurship. There's NEDA, National Enterprise Development Authority, is the apex body for driving entrepreneurship. But similarly, within the ministry, we have IDB also trying to do it, trying to teach people how to create soap. And then there's Z, Small Enterprise Development Board, again trying to do the same thing. SED has 1,600 people on the ground, 1,300 DOs. NEDA has 600 DOs. IDB has 300 DOs. And EDB has 300 DOs. Altogether how much? Trying to do the same thing. Similarly, if you go to Pradesh Sabha, they also have initiative to drive entrepreneurship.
But in the end, the entrepreneurs are crying out saying
it's all
there's no support.
There's no support, right? What I'm trying to say is it's not synced. So I'll give you how we are going to do it. So we ask all these institutions to bring all the development programs by 7th of January to one table. We're going to sync one plan for the entire country, and we will utilize these 2,000 odd people into particular tasks. Then obviously the Pradeshya Sabha and Palat Sabha will also get a task from that particular agenda. So the clarity will go, Niresh. Thus far the clarity is not there, because everybody is given the same KPI, even it's not monitored. You expect the Nagara Sabha also to do entrepreneurship development. You get the Pradeshya Lekam Karyalaya to do the same thing, and you have tasked the Palat Sabha to do tourism. Right? And then you have the tourism board who is trying to drive it. So it's just faced.
Now this is something that all Sri Lankans really knew.
Yeah.
But perhaps we accepted it too readily. This dysfunctionality of our government and our country as a whole. A person who wants to build his house, he goes from pillar to post, trying to get the various approvals and so on. But we tended to accept it and of course
live with it.
Live with it and bribe our way out of it. Unfortunately,
our industrial is, when we have 20 sectors called thriving industries, and we support them. So we've met them more than 3 times within this short period. So when they come and share their pains, one time the minister asked, how did you guys not come to street? And we were on streets fighting for something, but these particular issues are dire, very prominent, very real issues for the industrialists. But they were never, they couldn't fight for it, right? So they got used to it and saying this is how it is, so I will find another solution. Maybe that's entrepreneurship. But still, the reality is, if such support was given to our industries like South Korea's and Vietnam's, where the government really do the facilitator role, really do the facilitator role. Our industries could have done much better, much greater, and the support, I think people got used to the system because they never had hope, they never had belief this can be changed now.
But also, wasn't there such a draconian clamping down on dissent by successive governments that anyone who, you said people should have got onto the street, but then what would have happened? We had white vans, we had Tripoli platoons, we had all kinds of nefarious organizations which were used to stamp out dissent in the most violent way. So thankfully all that is behind us now.
Yeah, Nilesh, I think it's again, I think we also need to take blame, because governments are happy to take down certain clusters of resistance because they were small. They were never organized. The only organized struggle I can remember within the past 2 decades was the teacher struggle. The entire teachers got on to a particular goal and they won it even during COVID. But everywhere else it's clustered because we are disconnected. The industry is disconnected. You talk to coconut industry. You have few players, the coconut exporters, coconut producers, coconut mills, coconut, and then the coconut alternative producers. You talk to them individually. They have different interests. As an industry, there is no plan. So how would you fight? Because you are still looking at how to survive your factory, how to survive your business. You have not been able to gather around, rally around a particular vision for your own industry. I think JAF is the only body that apparel, they have got everybody to sing the one song, right? Similarly, there are a few more, like now the association for the vehicle assembly industry. I think they are also together because now they form strength. So similarly, the industrialists and the people also has to work together, start thinking that the common issues are common. I mean, if you take urban council, you try to solve your house issue, but you never talk to your neighbor. If we get together, we can solve this. So that is also something this society is missing. I think we are realizing we've shown the power of collectivism through the Aragalaya and all that. I think it will also change. I mean, even our government needs, if you are repeatedly diffusing people, repeatedly not hearing what people are saying, it's up to the people to make it a formidable force and tell what's right. So that democracy is still there, and I think we will ensure that is there because we came through that. So,
and of course we at Newsfirst will always keep reminding you in the interests of the people, and that's why we keep inviting you and your colleagues back.
It's active citizenship, no?
Absolutely. Now you did mention about 7 new zones. Any inkling of what would be new about these zones?
So,
because we spoke about the old zones.
I think even these are like not our new things, right? So we as a country, we are planning to have a chemical zone, a zone that do chemical processing and creating certain base chemicals for the country. So there will be a zone near Parantan, that's we are thinking, and then there needs to be this apparel zone where the fabrics can be manufactured, because our apparel industry doesn't have a supply chain, and there's a request or a plan for boat building. There are a few areas that need identified, and then there is a need for a tannery related, like for leather industry, and there's few IT parks that's been looked at, planned. So so I I don't want to affirm it as one, but there will be few more very thought through designed areas, and even Hambantota will be a reprocessing zone based on the port. So you can do a lot of reprocessing, shipping and all those things. So there's a lot of interest and demand from investors, and most of these zones will be private public partnerships where the land will be allocated by the government, and the developments will take mostly with the private investments.
Now you mentioned education as being one of the problematic areas in the past, simply because we haven't been turning out enough professionals to cater to industry. So for example, IT industry, which you are very familiar with, basically we don't have enough IT personnel, because you need 10,000, 20,000 IT technicians in order for the major players to come in here. But at the same time, there's been a complete disconnect with the training institutes. So how are you going to bridge this?
So for the industries that comes under Ministry of Industries, we ask them to come up with a manpower plan for them for 5 years. So that is what's going to get synced with the Treasury educational program with the Ministry of Education. And even for the IT, I think even to create IT graduate or a skilled person to that caliber will take 4 to 5 years. So that's why we will be launching from a digital perspective a bridging program, 1 year, 1.5 years, and we need to recalibrate our NVQ programs. So today I learned that our vehicle assembly industry, to do certain work, there's about 140 odd Indian technicians are working here, because the knowledge is lacking, because the industry has started in 2018. So industry has started, but there has not been any curricula in the skilling education, that is tertiary education, to cater that. There's only one degree now going towards that. I think that's happening in Vayamba. Too late, the industry has started, no resources. So we have to look at those gaps to find bridging programs, and then to recalibrate our higher education. Very clearly we need to understand graduate schools, that is universities, is different to creating the right workforce. 10 to 15 or 15% will go for graduate schools, but the rest will go on to professional skills, various skill demands. So that is the missing piece. It's not that we don't have enough graduate schools.
So we're creating intellectuals rather than creating people with the proper skills.
I think if you really take from an income earning perspective, now the technical skills are more valued and higher paid as well. Now if you take gem and jewellery, now the gem and jewellery program, I visited 2 weeks ago, the award ceremony, they have doing it at NEQ 3 and a diploma level, but that gemologist and similar, there are about 5 professions around it. Globally, if you take, it's more than 900,000 rupees, 700,000 rupees. The lowest was at 450,000 rupees when you take the global level, but our industry doesn't pay that much. But those skills are very highly valued. Even a graduate out of University of Jawadhanapura won't get 150,000 for 2 years. You know what I'm getting? Yeah. But a NEQ 3 and a diploma will learn you that in 3 years in no time, if you're skilled. So we need to tell children that there are other avenues, and entrepreneurship is also another avenue, because we are at 3% as entrepreneurs in the country, so we want to grow it to 8%. So there's more options.
Interesting thoughts indeed. I'm afraid we're almost out of time, but one final question. Now, the NPP government has begun this journey, but it's going to face a lot of challenges, and it's a long journey. What do you want in terms of participation and support of the public? What do you see the public's role to be in this?
So firstly, I think there has been a huge disconnect with public and government thus far. So first thing that we want to do is, when we are clear about our own strategy, that means already a lot of people reach out to us how to engage, how to be part of this. Still, since we are not done with our roadmap, we are just keeping them aside. So I think people will have a lot of opportunity to engage in the local government level, trying to fix their own locality, to support with their professional skills in a particular ministerial work, which is already we have begun. And I think the Clean Sri Lanka program will invite people abroad also from January to be part of the change, and I think that particular program will enable citizens to be part of a particular behavioral change that we want to do, to drive this country to a different level. And so I think being vigilant, questioning us, and I think positive criticism will help us, because we are also doing a hard job. We came through the hard way, not for any other purpose but to rebuild this country. So whilst you give your criticism, if it's in a positive manner, it's good. I mean, it's easy on us, because we can then concentrate on what we are doing. But if it's still people think that this government needs to fall, it's our children who are going to fall, right? So that is the only request I have. I mean, we are not perfect. We might do mistakes, we will take wrong decisions, but it doesn't mean the entire purpose is diffused. It doesn't say that the entire effort, when one particular minister says something, and if that is wrong, that is wrong. It doesn't mean the 24 others are doing wrong at the same time. It doesn't mean the government servants, the officials are doing bad. Everybody is working hard, but obviously even in a private sector things can go wrong, and you correct it and you move on. That's how life is. So that is the invitation for the public, for me, to say, you guys are in trouble, we are also in trouble, we are doing the hard way, we have taken a hard job, so let's work together, learn and grow. Mistakes will teach us, but none of those mistakes to gain anything to our families, to gain anything in our personal account. So if you even make mistakes, it's trying to do the best thing for the country, and let's learn from and move on. That's the request I have for the citizens.
Excellent points indeed, and I'm afraid we are out of time. My thanks to Chathuranga Abeysinghe, Deputy Minister of Industry and Entrepreneurship Development. Thank you for being with us. And thank you to you at home for watching on this Christmas day. Don't go away, because the news is coming up next. Have a good evening.